Today I want to show you how to increase the height of a song on the MPC. Let's do it. What's up, this is Marrcello. If you're interested in MPC tutorials just like this one, consider subscribing. Also, if this is of any help to you, leave a like in the comment and hit the bell so you don't miss any future tutorials. Let's dive in. So when does a sound feel tall? If you take just one sound, for example a lead, as you can hear, it can't really feel tall on its own. You need another sound for that. It needs to be contrasted with a second sound, for example a bass. So let's unmute the bass. Alright, if you hear them both, the bass feels definitely closer to the ground and the lead feels like it's floating up there somewhere, but only in the context of the bass. So the contrast is important between those two. Alright, now, so how can we make the contrast between those two sounds bigger and thereby make the mix sound taller? Alright, let's look at the lead first. What can we do? We can add an EQ to the lead and maybe cut away some lows and add some highs. So the lead will appear even higher in contrast with the bass. So let's do that. Let's go to track mix and the lead program. Let's add an EQ. EQ air. Let's add the air para EQ. And now let's cut away some lows. Too much. Like that. And now let's add some additional highs. So let's take the high band and let's leave it at shelf. And now let's just add some dBs. dB. Okay, now normally I wouldn't take it this far, but just for the purpose of this video, so you can hear the contrast better. Let's hear it without the EQ. And now let's lift it up. Alright, now the second thing we can do to make the contrast bigger between those two is to look at the bass. So let's go to track mix again and let's take a look at the bass. Let's just solo the bass for now. And let's add an EQ to the bass, the same EQ. And now we want to bring the bass lower. So the contrast between the lead, which is very high now, and the bass will be bigger. So the mix seems taller, or the mix sounds taller. So let's cut. Let's make a high cut. Let's cut away some highs or some mids from the bass. Alright, now we get it a little lower, but now let's also add some lows additional. But let's make a low cut too. Make a low cut at 20 Hertz, so it can't go below that. EQ, and now let's just add some lows with the shelf, with the lowest band. Let's just Okay. All right, now let's listen to the difference between first the uneq'd version. So the bass and the lead are pretty mid-rangey, and then I'm going to switch to the EQ'd version where the lead is higher and the bass is lower. Try to close your eyes while listening so you can really hear the contrast and fully concentrate on what you're hearing. So as you can hear, the difference is very clear. Let's hear the same thing, but in context of the whole song. The only thing that changes are those two elements. So the bass gets lower and the lead gets higher. So let's unmute all the other elements. So as you can hear, those two elements, only those two elements make a big difference. If you have a flat and mid-rangey sounding mix, you can either look at those two elements, so the highest and the lowest, and try to extend them somehow. But you can also go to the master and just add an EQ and just boost some lows and some highs. This can restore a feeling of height because it emphasizes the contrast between the lowest and the highest element. So just boost some highs and some lows on the whole master channel. But be very careful with that because it changes a lot of elements. But just try and see what sounds good. Okay. The same thing goes for the drums actually. So let's go to our drum program and let's just solo the drums. Mute everything else. It doesn't sound bad, but we can still improve the height of the drum set overall. So the contrast between the kick and in this case probably the hi-hat, which is the highest element. So let's just go into the EQ of the whole program, of the whole drum program, and let's just boost some highs. So maybe with this highest band, just leave it on shelf and it will lift up the whole drum set. And on the lows, let's just make it a bell type curve, and let's leave it at 100 Hertz. Let's just maybe boost it at 2 dB or something like that. All right, let's hear it first without and then with. So it sounds a lot bigger, I think. And if you have a flat and mid-rangey sounding drum pattern, this can really add a lot of life to this drum pattern and make it more exciting, especially if you lift up those highs. All right, now, so as you can hear, with a song feeling tall, it's all about contrast. So it's the contrast between the normal sound and the extended version. So this makes the song feel tall. So if you have a song with the same settings all throughout the song will probably feel tall in the beginning, but then the ears get used to those settings and it will sound good, but it won't sound very tall after a certain time. But if you want to emphasize, for example, the chorus or certain elements of the song which are important, then you can play with the height. So for example, you can put a low pass filter on the lead, cut away some highs just before the chorus, in the pre-chorus, for example, and then let it open up in the chorus, and this will lift up the melody, and this could be a cool effect to just emphasize the importance of the chorus. And if at the same time the whole song gets wider, it's like this, and it's not feeling really big all of a sudden because of the contrast. The same thing goes for the kick. Try to just mute the kick or take out the kick in the first part of the verse, and then let it come in the second part, and it will give the whole song its low end. And before you had the feeling something is missing, and then if the kick comes in, you get rewarded, and your feeling was right, and it's very satisfying for your ears. Let's try the same thing with the bass, because in this example the bass is lower than the kick, I think. Let's mute the bass and then unmute it. So this adds a whole new level, and this only works because of the contrast. So just think about how you can arrange your song to create those kind of contrasts. And you can also think of that while making the beat. So if you have a bass, then that's cool. The low and the low mids are covered maybe. Then you have an element which is in the mid-range, a piano for example. And then you need a lead or a plug or something which is high, which can cover the highs, and then you have the whole frequency range covered, and then you can play with muting and unmuting those parts to create a contrast and thereby to create height. I talked a lot today, but I think this is a pretty important factor of big sounding mixes. Alright, now let's hear the biggest possible contrast we can create with this beat for now. We have still one element missing, which is depth, but we'll come to that later. Let's switch from a narrow, short verse to a wide, tall chorus. So first it will sound like this, and then it will sound like this. So it will expand in terms of width and height. So I'm going to start with the narrow, short verse, and then switch to the wide, tall chorus, and then switch back again. So you can hear this movement. So first this, and then it will go back. So let's close our eyes. Alright, we're done with this part. Make sure to watch the other two parts of this video series about height, width and depth. You can watch them right here. Alright, I'll see you over there. Peace.
Komm nicht an, doch mach mir keinen Kopf. Du fragst mich, wie es sein soll, doch ich hab keinen Bock mit dir zu reden, denn deine Storys haben keinen Plot.